That's it. Down here, I have 750. We could watch somebody walk from one end of campus to the other without losing sight of them. Phenomenal tool. You hit a call box. You feel like someone's following you. We're going to be able to get eyes on you. Somebody just took a backpack out of the main building. They have an orange backpack on themselves. We're looking for an orange backpack on the sidewalk suddenly, and then we're making arrests. So it's a phenomenal, phenomenal tool. That's why responsible reporting is going to be so, so important. We can't do anything unless you guys communicate with us. So I'm going to segue the conversation into some of our workplace safety kind of angle here. We're going to talk about dealing with irrational and violent behaviors. I'm going to start off this conversation by playing a very short video clip from one of the Super Bowls, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. But it describes a domestic violence situation. But I want you guys to think about if you're in a meeting with a student or a meeting with a colleague and things are becoming difficult, how would you report that in a very discreet manner?
911, operator 901, where's the emergency?
127 Brynmere.
Okay, what's going on there?
I'd like to order a pizza for delivery.
Ma'am, you've reached 911. This is an emergency line.
Large with half pepperoni, half mushroom.
You know you've called 911. This is an emergency line.
How long it'll be?
Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency or not?
Yes.
And you're unable to talk because...
Right.
Is there someone in the room with you? Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house?
No.
Can you stay on the phone with me?
No. See you soon. Thank you.
So very powerful clip, very simple at the same time as well. Dispatchers here at Drexel University are trained to pick up on those cues that you're dealing with. If you have a disturbance in your office space, you're meeting with a student, things are going sour, tell a colleague before the meeting starts that this might be a difficult meeting if you know that going into it. Very often, our trouble students, you probably have an idea that it's probably going to be a difficult meeting before you go into it. They just all of a sudden don't snap for the most part. However, if things do go sour, pick up the phone, put it on the desk, call us. We'll hear yelling in the background or disturbance. And even if you're not able to articulate exactly where you're at, slip in the building name, and we're going to send police there. So there's a lot of different techniques that we can do. I'm going to talk about a couple of them. What we're really talking about, threatening behaviors, nonverbal, clenching fists, hitting desks, and obviously the typical verbal cues. Violent behaviors are typically any aggressive acts, and we're also concerned about any type of disruptive acts. We've had students who've gone into big lecture halls like this with a big bong on their head, and they post it on social media, and they give the professor a hard time and refuse to leave. Sometimes the professors just deal with that type of stuff. We want to know about those type of things as well. So if you hear of those type of interactions, they could sometimes key on to a bigger issue that's going on with the student. We want to know if you encounter any of these types of issues, because sometimes students will go from one spot to another. Same thing with faculty members. So verbal de-escalation. At the end of the day, what you guys want to do is decrease arousal and try to facilitate that communication. Some main tips here. Staying in control is obviously the most essential portion. Call for assistance. Don't hesitate, as I said, to tell a colleague that you need help. We always talk about using the prearranged code. So if you're going into a meeting and say, hey, Jane, I need the red folder. The red folder is a key for Jane to pick up the phone, call for help. And that's a very powerful technique to quietly tell a colleague to go get assistance for you. And then obviously be a good witness. You see something, you see a coworker struggling with somebody, knock on the door. Ask if they're okay. Ask if they need a cup of coffee. There's techniques that you can deploy to help your colleagues out as well. Maintaining a physical stance is obviously important as well. Eye contact is essential. These are some tips that the police officers actively deploy as well that you guys can apply to obviously non-law enforcement scenarios. Physical dividers. A desk is always really, really important. Or if you're kind of at a front lobby, like a lobby desk is also very important as well. Don't allow people into locked secured areas. If you think something's going to be difficult, don't lock that door. Maybe have that meeting in kind of like a common space with some lounge chairs. And if somebody wants to leave because they're upset, let them leave. Don't hold them back. And then some other verbal methods that you guys can deploy. Informational questions are very powerful, as well as contact information. So if you're struggling with somebody, you say, yeah, I don't have that answer, but Mr. Smith does. Mr. Smith's not available right now, but he'll be in a couple hours. I'm going to take down your information, and you can come back then. What you just did, you bought yourself time. Then you can pick up the phone, call us, and we'll help you out from that point forward. And it is also okay to explain rules and consequences for the behavior. okay, Mr. Smith, you're yelling right now. I'm unable to help you if you continue to yell, and let them know that that's how it's going to play out. And so that kind of segues us into the active shooter component. You guys have probably heard different definitions over the years. We watch the same news that you guys watch. So we know this is the elephant in the room, and we feel that it's finally time that a lot of people are ready to start having these conversations. But in short, it's an individual actively engaged in the killing or the attempting to kill people in a confined, populated area. In most cases, active shooters are using firearms, and there's no pattern or method to their selection of victims. What we want to focus on today is skills to help you guys prepare and respond to being trapped inside a building during such an event. So we really start off with Columbine. Columbine was kind of the moment where law enforcement changed its response to active shooter scenarios. As you guys can see from the images, and you probably recall, during Columbine, all the law enforcement sat outside and waited. They waited for the SWAT team to get there. It takes about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes for a SWAT team to get all the information they need to go into a building. That's too long. People were dying during that time. So now what they do, first two officers on scene, pair up, they go in the building, and their one goal, eliminate the shooter. Mitigate that threat as quick as possible. That means stepping over victims. That means going right to the sound of the gunshots. Doesn't sound fun, doesn't sound appealing, but our goal is to minimize the amount of victims at that point. So obviously that traditional police response, as I just alluded to with Columbine, doesn't work. At the end of the day, guys, this is a very low probability event, but obviously the consequences of an active shooter event can be very, very deadly. From what we know, it has occurred across all geographic regions. There's really no identifiable pattern. The only thing the FBI has just recently come out and said is that the only thing they can really truly tie anything to is financial difficulties. So financial difficulties might be a trigger point, which obviously you guys are probably ingrained in, unfortunately, to a certain extent, but there is no identifiable pattern with commerce, educational facilities, none of that. It is defined as a predatory violence. The objective is obviously to create maximum damage. And one of the most important things, being passive is not a safe strategy. Doing nothing does not work. Laying down on the ground, for the most part, I wouldn't advise on that. You have to take some kind of action, whether that's getting out of a building, hiding, whatever it might be, even fighting. So 3 stages of a disaster response. I'm going to move through this quickly. You are going to underestimate the situation. It's a scary situation. It's just the reality of what we're dealing with. It is going to take time for your brain to process the situation. And we talk about this phrase, social proofing. It's a very powerful concept. You smell something burning in your office space. You're just sitting there working on your computer. You smell something. You say, it's probably just me. You don't get up and investigate it. And then a coworker comes by and says, do you smell that burning? And you both look at each other and you're like, yeah. And all of a sudden it reaffirms what you're thinking. Or you hear that loud pop. And you say, it's probably a firework. It happened to me. I used to live in South Philly. And I was walking into my house one day, and I hear 3 pops. And I said, well, I work for a law enforcement agency. I'm around guns every single day. That wasn't a gunshot. 10 minutes later, I'm getting an email from the city of Philadelphia. It was a drug deal gone bad. And here I caught myself social proofing because I said, it can't be near me. Why would it happen near me? But it does happen. Inevitably, you're going to have to work through these steps quickly. So you need to get past the denial portion fast. You start deliberating what you want to do next. So we want you guys to have a plan because otherwise you're going to be severely limited in your ability to perceive what's happening around you. And then you want to make that decisive moment happen very quickly. You want to know your surroundings and you want to have a plan scripted out in your head. Okay, so I go out this door, the one that's closest to my desk, but for some reason I can't get there. There was a fire or the doors are chained. What do I do next? Have these ideas scripted out in your head beforehand. Think about these a little bit so you do know what to do. So again, the worst thing you can do is nothing. When you decide to act, make sure you do it with a purpose. You guys might recall this. This is going back probably 20 years ago or so now. The Great White Station nightclub fire. The band Great White was playing up at a Rhode Island club. They had pyrotechnics in there. They weren't supposed to have pyrotechnics, and the whole place went up in flames. I point out the exits here and the big glass row of windows for a reason. This next slide, all these numbers indicate where people died. 100 people even died in this fire that night. And the largest amount, 31, in the middle of the screen there, in the middle bottom, went to the main entrance because they all went to the one spot they knew they came in at. When you go into a space, whatever it is, a movie theater, pay attention to when they say, these are where all the exits are. You want to have these options available to you. Not the fear monger, but think, look around next time you go into a music venue, a club, a bar, whatever it might be, and look for your exits. I do it every single time I walk into a room here on campus. So right now I know there's exits here where we all probably walked in, one over here, there's one over here, and one over here. A lot of people don't think to look behind the stage, but work through these things. The other big issue that happened here, social proofing. A lot of people saw these flames coming down the ceiling tiles, and there's some very graphic videos out there, and people did not move. They said, oh, that's got to be part of the show. Trust me, it wasn't part of the show. And everyone froze until somebody finally panicked next to them, and they all started running. At the end of the day, though, guys, one of the most important aspects of this conversation is threat assessment. And I think you guys, as your role as advisors, this might be the most important aspect for you in particular. What we want to do, inevitably, is prevent these things from occurring. We want to prevent attacks by enhancing the stakeholders' abilities, that's you guys, to effectively detect, deter, respond to, and recover from acts of extreme violence. What we're really concerned about, any expression of an intent to inflict violence, injury, damage, whatever it might be, so we can intervene so we don't have an armed attacker showing up at our school, or for some of us, what is work. I'm going to skip that slide for the sake of time, but what we're really talking about, guys, warning behaviors. I have the background there is Facebook, social media. We spend so much time, that's kind of my honeypot now. I spend a lot of time on social media dealing with investigations related to that, because that's where so many of our students go to. So many faculty and staff go to social media and put ramblings out there. So we really do have to key in on that. But our best predictors are going to be behaviors in communication that are known to be associated with violence and other high-risk behaviors. We're talking about leakage. People write something online, or they doodle in a book, or there's something in a paper that is submitted to a professor that talks about some kind of extreme position, whatever that might be. So the themes and the methods, you might see sometimes overt, veiled innuendo. There might be direct as well to intended victims. I already talked about doodlings, social media, but papers, online, journals, might be artwork someone puts on the side of a homework assignment, or in their notebook, a professor sees that. And we're talking about violence, suicidal dispositions, hopelessness, despair, vengeance, isolation. But you guys are really going to be key in linking that puzzle, because there's only so many of us, and you guys are going to be very much so kind of that frontline position. You know, I know one individual professor might not have the full picture, while you guys might be able to kind of tie together a lot of the puzzle. If you ever do encounter a situation where something just isn't sitting right with you, it's probably the time to pick up the phone and call us. We're not a lock them up and throw them away police department. We understand what an arrest does to a student's record. It absolutely dooms their career. That's not lost on us, and then it creates a very vicious cycle. So for that reason, that's not what we do. We're very, very community oriented. We are going to try to help you guys pull together all the various resources this university has, counseling services, you know, all kinds of stuff. So student life, bring them into the fold. So there's a lot of different things. We do have a threat assessment team to kind of tie this stuff together. But the biggest thing we need is you guys to reach out to us when you do encounter a situation like this. Because very often, everyone says, you hear it in the news all the time, there were signs. We should have known. They were acting off. Something wasn't right. Yeah, they just failed a bunch of classes, and then they posted a picture of a gun online. We see this all the time play out across the nation, and people are always remorseful because they didn't act on it. Well, we want you guys to feel encouraged to act on that. We had a student who actually used our anonymous reporting line to report that another student posted a picture of firearms on one of their social media feeds. They anonymously reported to us. We looked into it. Turned out a student legally purchased but had a large amount of firearms at a residence nearby campus. That person was stripped of all their weapons. But again, a very, very great example of somebody who just followed their gut intuition and acted on something. The reality is this is playing out all across the nation. So we want you guys to be aware, because I really do believe genuinely that you guys are in a position to really help us out and us to have a really powerful partnership with you. So the response gap, getting back to active shooter. The reality is, guys, if something happens, you're going to have to act on your own. Law enforcement will be luck at best, moments away, at worst, minutes away. But there's going to be a time where you're going to need to act on your own, and we want to make sure that you guys are prepared. You're going to hear this phrase, run, hide, fight a lot. It's still probably the best thing out there. what we're trying to teach you guys is a situational awareness. We want you to identify risks, what can hurt you, and things that can help you. So with that said, I'm going to play for you a short video. In the beginning of the video, it's going to say California State University. When that logo pops up, you're going to have to imagine it says Drexel, but it's a very good video. It runs about 8 minutes. It's really going to tie together a lot of these concepts, and then that's going to take us toward the tail end of our presentation, and I'm going to tie everything together with some resources and some kind of thoughts on public safety. So with that said, Drexel University.
This may be the most important video you will ever watch. We hope not, because for that to come true, you would have to be involved in an active shooter incident. While the likelihood of finding yourself in an active shooter incident is small, the risk is real, and these situations are happening with increasing frequency on college campuses and elsewhere. Our objective is to help put you in control of the outcome. Everything we discuss in this video can be summed up in 3 words: run, hide, fight. But first, what is an active shooter? An active shooter is someone with a gun attempting to kill people in a confined, populated area. For you, that means someone with a gun on campus who wants to kill. The purpose of this video is to give you the tools and confidence necessary to survive an active shooter attack. How will you know when an active shooter attack is underway? Know that gunshots don't always sound like they do in movies. If it sounds like a gun, or even firecrackers, consider that it may be an attack. Do not wait for confirmation. Do not seek a second opinion. If it sounds like gunfire, it's gunfire. The same goes for screaming. While screaming doesn't always indicate danger, it may be a reaction to something terrible. Keep in mind that police are minutes away, not seconds. You must fend for yourself during this time. You cannot wait for the police to arrive. You cannot wait to act. If you are inside a building, use any way out available, including emergency doors and windows. Keep closed signs don't matter now. All options are available to you. Always be aware of your surroundings. Identify your options and make a plan. By the time an attack begins, you should already know where to run. Look for exits now, so you won't have to during an attack. When the time comes to run, leave everything behind except your phone. Everything. Just thinking about what to bring is time wasted. The most valuable thing you have is you. Grab yourself and go. Get yourself to a safe place. If you are outside, run away from the attack sounds. Don't stop running until you are certain you are away from danger and in a safe area. When running, try to make yourself a more difficult target. It might be slower, but it could be safer. Don't turn around to see what's happening behind you. It is unlikely that the shooter is chasing you, but either way, slowing down to look for the shooter is not a smart strategy. Once you are out of immediate danger, dial 911. Tell the dispatcher there is an active shooter and your location. Do not assume someone else has already called 911. Yours could be the one call that saves lives. If you think it's too risky to leave your current location, hide. Active shooters targets, so don't be an easy target. It's that simple. An ideal hiding place would be a room with no windows and a locking door, but that option might not be available when the time comes. Turn off lights and shut the blinds. Make it look like the room is unoccupied. Even partial darkness helps. Choose cover over concealment whenever possible. Concealment is something like an office partition. It will hide you from sight, but it will not stop a bullet. Cover is something that will do both. Heavy wooden doors, file cabinets full of paper, and objects of this type should always be your first choice. If possible, barricade doors behind you, even if locked. But try not to make unnecessary noise in the process. Be silent. Turn your phone to silent. Disappear. Shooters don't waste time exploring rooms that look unoccupied, trying to break down locked doors, or searching for hiding students. Once hidden, be prepared to stay hidden a long time. Stay calm and be patient. It may take a while, but the police will eventually find you and lead you away from danger. Again, the time to look for places to hide is not after the shooting has begun. It is now. Wherever you are on campus, be aware of your surroundings and ask yourself, where could I hide if it happens? What are my options? Does this classroom have a closet? Does the door lock? What could I use to barricade the door? If no other option is available, defend yourself. You might not think of yourself as a fighter, but others just like you have surprised themselves with how effective they can be when fighting back was the best option for survival. The attacker has at least one weapon, and you do too. Look around. Chairs, textbooks, backpacks, rocks, pens. You have more options than you probably thought. One readily available weapon is a fire extinguisher. You will find them in nearly every hallway. You also have surprise on your side. The attacker is not expecting armed resistance until police arrive. This is your advantage. When you fight back, your goal is to overwhelm the attacker and minimize their ability to use weapons effectively by limiting their vision or physically disabling them. And with others nearby, weakening the attacker will give them confidence to join the fight. Lastly, when you fight back, don't stop too soon. Fight until the threat is over. The number one job of the police is to stop the attack. This means they are totally focused on neutralizing the shooter. Keep in mind that active shooters look like anyone else, even students like you. So when you exit a building, raise your hands to show the police that you aren't holding any weapons. You don't want to be mistaken for the attacker. Remember, just as you are afraid, the police are on edge too. They need to be ready to take immediate and decisive action. So your behavior is critical. Hands in the air. Avoid sudden movements. Obey police direction. The police will shout orders. They don't have time for courtesy. They must act quickly and forcefully. Do what they say for everyone's benefit. Like we said, the police are there to stop the attack. Once that job is done, they will turn to helping. Let's talk about helping others. This may be the most difficult decision of your life, but the best thing that you can do may be just to run and get help. Remember, most active shooter incidents begin unexpectedly and end quickly. Help is on the way. If you can remember run, hide, fight, you have the most important knowledge needed to survive an active shooter attack. Familiarize yourself with your environment. Plan ahead. If you are prepared, you will be able to run, hide, and fight without hesitation and with confidence. Please share this video, not only with your fellow students, but with family and friends. The active shooter threat is not limited to your campus, or to any public place for that matter. This could be the most important video you ever share. Thank you for watching.
So, concepts we talked about, guys, right there in that video: run, hide, fight. You also hear the other acronym: avoid, deny, defend. Just working through these really quickly. When you have to run, guys, get out of the building. Don't take anything with you. Leave your purse behind. We've had documented cases. A girl from Philadelphia went back into the Pulse nightclub in Orlando to go retrieve a friend. Bad decision. She paid with her life. We've had people that went into San Bernardino, into the office building to go get their purse. Also died. So not a smart plan. Pick up the phone, call, hide, turn those phones off, silence them. A lot of 911 centers are now supporting text messaging. So do we. I'm going to get to that in just one moment. But barricades, pile desks, anything you can up the top of at the doors. The doors that have the hinge at the top up there, get a belt. Tie that around there. You can't open the door. Tie the belt around the doorknob to something that that'll be secure. A lot of things in these classrooms are moving around. Same thing with your offices. Not so much in this space, but a lot of other spaces, yes. And then fight. If you have to go to this step right away, don't hesitate. Sometimes this is going to be the best option that's presented to you. Be aggressive. Fight like your life does depend on it. we talk about the concept of swarming and overcoming. This is probably the most successful technique we've seen. Flight 93, we all know what happened on September 11th. They took the plane down by swarming the cockpit. Paris train attack 2015, 3 off-duty service members, American service members were on a train. Guy starts unloading rounds. His gun jams. They swarm him and overtake him. Only one person got shot there. But more recently, the Waffle House. The guy was at his booth, and he just turned around and grabbed the gun right out of his hand. Guess what? Ended right there. Powerful, powerful thing. Went right to fight. So as I said, pick a strategy that best represents your immediate best option, and don't hesitate in doing that. So what we're talking about, guys, is the survival mindset. Even us that are law enforcement professionals, when these big things happen, we hear somebody has a gun, our adrenaline goes up too. We don't want you to be anxious. We'd rather you be anxious versus panic. Same thing, we want you to recall what you learned versus disbelief and denial. And inevitably, we hope that you'll be prepared to act with a rehearsed plan of action versus kind of stalling, falling into a state of hopelessness and not really doing anything at all. Again, we want you to be mindful but not fearful. This is the reality of the world we're living in. You hear things all the time happening in all kinds of settings. We want you to be aware and prepared, not necessarily afraid. Very briefly, Virginia Tech. Each one of these rooms, each one of these charts here represents a room in Norris Hall. The attacker ended up chaining a door and put a note there. He said, if these chains come off, a bomb's going to go off. A faculty member found that, took it to his supervisor, and didn't call the police right away. Obviously, bad decision. Then the shooting started happening. The very last room is the only one who had time to take action. They pushed desks up against the door, denied the shooter access. Obviously, no one was shot or killed in that room. The shooter went into the other rooms multiple times. So obviously, if you can take action, that's the best thing to do. A lot of the other rooms kind of stalled and did nothing. And we already talked about the police response, so I'm going to skip over that for the sake of time. Does anyone know what our largest crime is on campus? Obviously, we have urban problems in an urban campus. Any guesses? Theft. That's a good guess. I'm 3 for 3 today on that. Usually I get a couple robberies, so we're pretty good. This is a good group. Unattended theft specifically is our largest crime. You leave your office door open, you come back 10 minutes later, you just ran down the hall to go to the bathroom, and guess what? That $1,500 MacBook Pro grew legs and walked away because it's a valuable computer. Same thing with your purse. And that iPhone, because God knows iPhones are way too expensive now. So it's a crime of opportunity. Our students deal with it all the time. Please, please, please coach your students if you meet with them. Tell them, you go to the library, don't leave things out. Even if you're just going to the bathroom. Same thing if they're going to the rec center to go get their swell on. And they put things in the cubbies, and guess what? They don't lock them. There's a spot for locks in there, but they don't use them. And guess what? People just go through and take what they want. Again, you guys are the experts on your space. So if you guys see something that doesn't sit right with you, that doesn't look right, that doesn't smell right, or someone just wandering the hallways and you know they might not belong, pick up the phone, call us. We can look into these things in a very discreet manner. And these are things you want to know about. Access control, obviously, don't prop doors, guys. The moment you prop a door, the moment all that card access stuff goes out the window. Doesn't matter what kind of bells and whistles we do that. You put a brick there, you put a little wood wedge, goes out the window. So we have a lot of things working behind the scenes, but if we do those type of things, it throws it all out the window. Walking escorts 24/7, 365. You can take a walking escort from here all the way out to 52nd and Woodland, which is super far. Get an Uber, get on the trolley. But you can do it if you really wanted to. We have partnerships with the University City District and Penn Public Safety as well. But 24/7, we also offer them at Queen Lane and Center City as well if you end up down there. You have to pick up the phone calls. You can also text us, which I'll get into in just one moment. Drexel Alert, you guys love your 2 a.m. texts? I love sending them. I'm the one you can get mad at, but Drexel Alert is our emergency notification system. We only send them when we are legally obligated to do so or when we feel our community needs to know about something. It is not a crime blotter. We just don't send things out just because we feel like it's a good time to send them. There's a lot of legal requirements on this. When there's any type of ongoing threat to your safety, we're going to send one of these out. So it's annoying. But please enroll your phone. It's important pieces of information. I promise you that. Some people don't enroll their cell phones. Please, please, please do it. It also is mandatory, goes to your email. The one saving grace, I get to send things out about snow days in there. So fingers crossed. Drexel Guardian, our smartphone application, I talked about texting us. If you search the iTunes or the Google Play stores, you can text our communication center by downloading Rave Guardian, R-A-V-E Guardian. Then you type in your drexel.edu email address, comes up with all the fancy Drexel branding, and it connects you directly to our communication center. Couple features, the text messaging, you can text our communication center. There's one-touch dialing through that, and that is going to provide us your GPS location when you initiate a contact with us. And then additionally, there is a shadow escort feature as well, that instead of getting a walking escort, you can set a timer. It's going to take you 10 minutes to walk from your office to your car in GSB or FLOT or whatever it might be. And you get to your location safely, you deactivate your timer, it goes away. We never even knew about it. You don't get there, you don't deactivate your timer in time, we're going to get a notification. It's going to give us any biographical information that you want to provide to us, as well as your GPS location off your cell phone. Our first step, we're going to pick up the phone, call you. Hey, is everything okay? 99.9% of the time, yeah, things are fine. People just forgot to deactivate their timer. Once in a while, someone doesn't answer the phone, and then we're sending the police out to try to find them. So it's a very, very powerful tool. We have people that use them every single day. We have students that use it up in New York City sometimes, and they don't deactivate their timer, and it gets really complicated because then we have to tell the New York City Police Department where they're at. But it's a great tool regardless. We'd rather them do that than not. And this is what the GPS location looks like. RAD training, rape aggression defense training. It's a self-defense training course. It's free to both men and women. The largest portion of this is verbal judo. You learn how to defend yourself using verbal cues. And then you get to go to the butt kicking stage where you get to throw some people on the ground. Very, very popular though. Schedule is highly customizable. They can do it for a group. If your particular office space has some free time every week during this time, they could split it up. There's things that they can do. Very popular. And then you guys are probably aware of the Responsible Dragon Protocol. We want responsible reporting of students that drank too much or did drugs. We don't want them to be fearful to reach out to us for medical attention, so they won't face legal sanctions. I feel like that's a message that's obviously very poignant for your group. So that's very, very, very important to us, and we've seen a significant uptick in the reporting of such events since the university's adopted this policy. And obviously, guys, the major gist of this entire thing, prepare and plan. I can't stress that enough. And then the last slide I got right here, campus security authorities. You guys are probably all qualified as CSAs. We're going through annual compliance time again. We all have to take those courses. But because of Penn State and a lot of the changes to the Clery Act and minors on campus, the university was required to identify people who are mandatory reporters effectively. You guys will probably all qualify as that in your roles due to your interaction with students. I know I do, but in short, what that says, if somebody comes to you with any type of information relative to a crime, even if it's incredibly vague information, a student in class starts saying that one of their friends, as vague as that is, was assaulted last night, come forward to us with that information. Let us investigate it. You're not required to ask any additional questions. Please just come to us with that information because it might point to a larger pattern that we know of, which has happened in the past. So very, very important, but a small point. So I condensed that down pretty good. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to shout them out. I'll also hang around for a few minutes afterwards. But there's a lot of resources on our website. And I know this isn't the sexiest of topics, but we really appreciate you guys giving us your time today. It's a very, very important thing. And if you ever want to take this presentation elsewhere, to other groups, to your office space, or share some of this information with your students, just please don't hesitate to reach out. All right? Excellent. You guys alive? Oh, I'm just checking. All right. I see one hand. Yes.
Till 2:30, by the way. So
Oh, I have till 2:30? Yeah. Great. Let's ask a lot of questions.
if someone has a permit to carry, are they allowed to bring a gun on our campus?
So the question was, if somebody has a permit to carry, are they allowed to bring it onto campus? No, they are not. The university has a strict no weapons policy, so that's firearms, knives, mace, any of that stuff. And the biggest reason why, we have our own armed police department on our campus that has, frankly, very, very, very quick response times. Believe it or not, right now, I had to leave that to come here. We're doing a tabletop right now on active shooter scenarios with FEMA and 8 other universities, and the first topic was active shooter. And they were talking about response times, and some of the other universities were saying how it would take them maybe 5 minutes to get there. And we said, oh, well, that would take us about 30 seconds. So we're very, very quick with that. What was well publicized a couple years ago, there was a student that had a permit to carry in the library. And somebody called it because he had his firearm tucked in the back of his pants. Somebody was in the basement and they walked by and they saw it and they said, oh my God, that's a gun. They picked up the phone and called us. We got there, we had him in handcuffs within 30 seconds of the call hitting our communication center. So I do promise you that we are going to move as quick as possible. And we didn't send an alert in that situation because A, the student was permitted to carry. So it was a legal firearm. He was in violation of university policy. He had to face university sanctions. But there was no ongoing risk because we had him in handcuffs. So any other questions, guys? No? Great. Let's see what else. That's all that I really have then. This presentation, a lot of this is available online as well. There's open enrollment on Career Pathway for anybody else who, everyone's favorite Career Pathway. If you want to steer someone that way as well, HR is running these sessions like once every 2 or 3 weeks. But we go around and do this all over, so we can highly customize this to whatever challenges you guys might face. But I really can't stress enough, guys, if you are encountering a student that is trouble, that is giving you issues, or that you just might be generally concerned about, reach out to us, let us know. So often you guys are going to be the first ones to identify these issues and really kind of connect this puzzle together. And very often, I know you guys are really kind of shouldering that burden. We don't want you guys to feel like it's all you. There's a lot of resources at play at this university, but it's very difficult sometimes for you guys to connect that puzzle. Let us help you out with that. So if anybody has any questions, you're more than free to come up afterwards, all right? Great, thank you guys.